Dave Faulkner, welcome to Noise11.com to talk about an album for the first time in 12 years.
Day you release an album, but let alone after 12 years, it's an even more special day.
I was going back through the catalogue just to put everything into perspective, and you did everything from Stoneage Romeos to Blue Cave in 12 years. So
Yeah, I know.
that's how long it's taken to get from Purity of Essence to this.
Are you serious? Was it 12 years in total?
12 years in total from your first
That makes
album
sense.
to your
You're right.
seventh.
You're right. Wow. Yeah. So what we have been slack. Yeah, there's been a few things happening. I mean, the obvious one, of course, is we had to look for a new drummer because Mark wanted to retire after many years of loyal service. He just got sick of touring, and he kind of is saving up his coins, and figuring out his retirement plan for a long, long time. It had been something he's been very focused on, and he finally got to the point where he's saying, "I don't need to work. Why would I do it?" We're in sort of the same boat, really, but we just love music so much that we don't want to stop. That for us, it's always been about that first. But Mark, he'd had his fill. So he didn't tell us for a few years after we released the last album, as you say, 12 years ago. And for a few years, it all seemed kind of normal. But then he was knocking back more and more gigs, just kind of taking the ones that were a bit more high profile, or like, the more luxurious ones, like the Dale and the Greens, things like that, where good money, comfy backstage, the sets aren't necessarily as long as, a big long pub show, and you kind of, have to kind of put out and it's uncomfortable. So for whatever reason, he was sort of like, tapering his career. And we didn't figure it out for a while. And finally he fessed up that he was, kind of, getting ready to leave. And it was all very good, but it's just, then we had to figure out, well, what do we do? Do we want to keep going without this guy? Because it was so important to us, not just historically, but also just for, the chemistry between us all. There's some magic there with Mark, which was something I really came to appreciate when we broke up in 6 years, in the middle there. When I came back to the band and we played again for home bake after 4 years, it was a bit of a shock, seeing this incredible energy there between us all. It was a little bit magical. And I realized then that was something unique to the four of us together. So we really thought long and hard about whether we dare, try to follow that up with someone else. And it took us a few years to kind of get used to the idea. And we did try Nick first after about, I think it was about 6 years maybe. He joined the band for about 18 months. And then Mark had some renovations he did, and he spent more money than he wanted. And he thought, well, I wouldn't mind touring again. He kind of, he got the itch again, basically, because after he retired, it was like all the things he hated about touring, he kind of forgot about, and he was missing all the good things. And so he came back, and he was in the band again about 10 more months. And then he went, you know what? I was right the first time, and I really want to go. So then we had to really choose, like, okay, there's no way Mark's coming back now. We know that. So do we want Nick? What do we want to do? We auditioned a few other drummers just to double check out, check our own work and see if we had the right one. And Nick just was so obviously the best person for the job. And of course, now we've, once we'd sort of pretty much decided at that point, it changed really. And, it became like he was the man. There was no more half in, half out thing. And then, of course, getting to work on new material was the real acid test. And that came at the end of 2019. So COVID gave us a couple more years of, of messing around. But yeah, as I said, between one thing and another, it seems like forever. And, at times it was kind of like we were in a holding pattern because, we weren't even certain if we'd continue. And so we just basically working with Mark for as long as he wanted to work, and then sort of figuring it out from there. And that took a few years to play out as well.
Well, Chariot of the Gods has a remarkably cohesive sound considering the interruptions of the pandemic.
Yeah, well, it was deliberately designed to be a little bit kind of, diverse. I mean, music. My songwriting is always diverse. I kind of, things just come from all directions, and the band kind of unifies it by its own sort of, self-identity. But we also chose to record the songs in several discrete sessions rather than, going to the studio for 6 weeks and nail it and then come out and then, bundle it all up and say, that's a single, and release them in, this order. We deliberately didn't do that. We decided to just go in and record a single and that was Answered Prayers. And then from there, okay, now we're going and work on some more material. And we started back in rehearsing again after we finished Answered Prayers and released it. And that's when we came up with Carry On and Get Out of Dodge. And we were thinking, like, these sound like singles to us, you know, one of these will be the next single. And we had a studio session booked for about, you know, 6 weeks ahead. And then, of course, COVID hit and kaboom, we didn't see each other for months, and we had to kind of restart that process. So then we did, you know, Get Out of Dodge and Hung Out to Dry at the same sessions. And we decided, in fact, Hung Out to Dry was going to be a B-side. And we thought that'd make a good single anyway, because we kind of said some stuff we wanted people to hear right then. And so we released that, and then, yeah, carried on from there. But each session was kind of like a discrete thing, because we wanted to be a bit more artisanal about it, you know, like bespoke recording rather than, you know, doing it by a job lot, which you often used to do.
It's interesting you talk in terms of singles. The track Settle Down to me sounds like, you know, if we were back in the 70s or 80s or 90s when singles were a thing, that sort of sounds like, you know, the song that would have been taken out to be presented.
That's one that Wayne Connolly really loves, and he's always thought that's kind of, he says to him, that's one of like a death-defying type song for him, you know, which was a single back from Mars and His Guitars. Look, to us, every song's a single, which, you know, we've proven how wrong we are about that many times in our past. You know, we released a song called Big Deal as a single once, which was a real crazy thing. We love the song though, so it's not like, you know, so we never think in terms of really like, you know, that the singles are more, you're kind of trying to guess what radio might be more likely to feel kindly towards, given what they play. It's not really about what we think about our songs. And as I say, every song to us is kind of like, that's a hit. It's just some of them hits that no one would ever play on a mainstream radio station or even an underground station sometimes.
Yeah. Brad must have felt like George Harrison when the Beatles awarded him something as a single, when you let him have I Come From Your Future as a single. First single since You Opened My Eyes.
That's right, yeah. So, well, yeah, I mean, but both of Brad's songs are great on this album. I think probably the best songs he's written, both of them. Certainly, I think Equinox is I call that his best song. I think it's a beautiful song, and it's really quite significant to Brad too, because it's about his recent marriage and that whole experience of falling in love again and finding someone, you know, in the middle of, you know, all the dramas of, you know, your life, you know, when you think you're pretty much through all that, it sort of all changed for him. You know, it's great.
I kept hearing these, like, let's call them music era flavoured bombs that keep dropping throughout this record. I keep listening and going, oh, wow, Pump It Up, Elvis Costello, that's a bit of Pete Townsend guitar, that's a bit of Glitter Band, The Knack, My Sharona Pause.
Well, I wouldn't say that we would necessarily hear those things ourselves. I mean, but when you say glam rock, though, that's always, you know, somewhere behind the scenes in the Gurus' DNA, if that's a mixed metaphor. But, you know, we've had that right through. I mean, from our very first single, that was very glam influence, you know, Leilani. And we came of age in the, you know, as teenagers in the 70s, and when glam rock was the thing, you know, we've all had really huge crushes on, you know, T-Rex and Bowie and, you know, Suzi Quatro and you name it. You know, that's our sweet spot, one of our sweet spots. But My Sharona, I mean, it's a great song, but it's not one that I would necessarily think of when I write a song.
No, I heard a bit.
Oh, well, it's certainly, you know, I mean, you know, again, you know, music, you know, we all come from similar worlds. You know, this is rock and roll, pop music, whatever, from the last 50 years, you know, and you different flavors, you know, surface in different artists at different times. And so there's bound to be some kind of crossover in things where you sort of like can cross-reference things. But specifically, I can tell you, I never thought of, you know, Pete Townsend or The Knack, or who was the other ones you named?
Well, I think there was a bit of Glitter Band in there, but you've told us a bit of glam was...
you know, like for me, what I was hearing is, of course, you know, T-Rex, you know, bit of Rose Tattoo there as well in World of Pain, mixed in with, you know, T-Rex and Suzi Quatro. I'm hearing Brian Wilson, you know, the Beach Boys on Get Out of Dodge, plus a bit of glam in there as well. bit of New York Dolls on Hang with the Girls. That's a really big thing for us, the New York Dolls, one of our favourite rock and roll bands. And, you know, we had a song on the last album that was kind of like a nod towards them as well, called What's In It For Me. So I think this is better, even closer to the Dolls than that one.
There haven't been a lot of covers by Hoodoo Gurus over the years. I think, you know, Wild Thing was on, you know, at one point.
That was on Mark Carroll singing Wild Thing with us at the, I think it was Manly Vale or somewhere, Manly Leagues. Yeah,
Doppelganger, you had to go at a few for Triple J at one point.
Yeah, well, because that was, you know, we were doing those live at the Wireless sessions back in the day, and you know, you didn't want to just go in and play songs off the album, so you sometimes knock out a few covers just to kind of like give yourself something interesting to play, and you know, and occasionally, you know, a new original song as well that hadn't been recorded elsewhere. But we did a couple of covers on this album just for the vinyl. We recorded them just because we wanted to, but as it happened, when we decided we wanted to release the vinyl album, we realised that there was too much music for one disc, so we had to kind of expand it a little. So that's when we put on Hung Up to Dry, which is not going to be on anything at that time other than the single way back. And two covers, I Want to Be Your Man by the Beatles, which we've always wanted to do. We've been talking about it probably for 20 years now. Finally got around to doing it. We just love the primitive nature of that song and how basic it is. We kind of call it caveman rock in our minds. So, and we of course chuck a fuzz guitar and give it a bit of the Blue Cheer kind of, you know, metallic sort of psychedelic sort of edge. And Dylan's song as well, obviously Five Believers, which is from Blonde on Blonde, and not one of the most famous songs of that record. And we thought we could kind of give it our own spin, bit of R&B sort of pretty things, kind of, you know, revved up grooves there. Yeah, but covers aren't our thing. You know, we love listening to other people's songs, and you know, and we always fantasize, oh, we'll play that one day. There's a couple of songs in my mind now that I wouldn't mind giving a shot to at some point just for fun. But you know, for us the main game is always what are we going to write and perform of our own.
Yeah, well, I guess you know, you're showing your influence when you do a cover, and you know, you're also showing that, you know, they're artists that you honour. So what's it like then when we go to something like this, and you've got Spiderbait and Grinspoon, The Living End, You Am I, and they're doing covers of your songs?
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, that was a huge compliment, and also what was even better is that they did some pretty damn good versions. You know, you often, some of these tribute albums you hear, they're kind of a little bit like, well, what's the point? You know, it's just go to the originals and be satisfied. But these bands actually did the ultimate thing, you know, which we really love, is they took it and made the songs their own and gave us a new spin on the music that when we hear it, kind of, you know, shows us a different angle on our own music. So, you know, that's what you want. You want people to actually, you know, embrace it and make it part of their vibe, rather than just, you know, a pale echo of something that used to be good. Yeah.
One of the bands that did a cover on here, a couple of young guys called the Persian Rugs. Whatever, they had that one album, but they sort of disappeared. Whatever happened to those guys?
They were a 60s group, I believe. So I think they were living in Lismore or somewhere, I forget. A bunch of farmers that got together and made a pretty cool record. That was kind of funny, you know. Like, obviously for us to do it was a B-side we did, which is the B-side of My Girl, a song called Be My Guru. So for the Hoodoo Gurus to do a cover of Be My Guru under the name of the Persian Rugs, I mean, that was, you know, very self-referential and kind of zen or something. But the Persian Rugs, people often, you know, thought it was, you know, de facto Hoodoo Gurus, but it never was to me, or I don't think to the rest of the guys either. That was just my way of showing, in fact, that when you say Hoodoo Gurus are a 60s band, which we often used to get that in a lot of reviews, people would, you know, characterise us as that. I would always find that weird because, you know, we like punk and metal and, you know, all the other things as well, and glam, as we say, and country, you name it. And those things, you know, are also very prevalent in our music. So it was always a misnomer. And when the band broke up and I'd been away from playing it for a couple of years and started doing gigs. So I formed a 60s group for fun at a New Year's Eve party, And I enjoyed it so much, I thought, well, I want to play more of that stuff. I've always had a huge thing for that sort of late 60s, mid 60s garage rock, you know, the Nuggets era. And so I decided I was going to do a group like that, and I ended up getting Brad in the band. And because we'd sort of trying some other stuff with Brad. And then I thought, well, I really like this stuff. Maybe I'll write a song or two, and I ended up writing all the songs. And it was kind of like a way of me sort of saying, well, here you go. Here's what Dave Faulkner sounds like when he's actually doing 60s music, you know. And as it happened, once Brad and I formed and we were looking for a drummer, and he said, well, Mark Kingsman's not doing anything. And I thought, yeah, he's a pretty good drummer, we'll ask him. And once we got Mark in, it's like, oh shit, we better ask Rick, otherwise he might be a little offended, because, you know, it looks weird getting three guys from Hoodoo Gurus together and not asking the fourth one what's wrong with him. So Rick joined, and we did do an EP with Rick, but then he had other things on, and, you know, and because it wasn't the Hoodoo Gurus, it was Persian Rugs, and he just thought, well, you know, I can't really be giving myself up to this kind of side project, this band that's, you know, not going to be famous and make a lot of money, and yet other things he had to do, pay some bills. So we got Kendall in the band and did an album, and that was, you know, really incredible fun. But it wasn't the Gurus. There was one song actually we did, and it was kind of, I'd written it as a sort of a folk rock sort of song, and, you know, Mamas and Papas, sort of that era. And we started playing it in rehearsal, and halfway through I said, no, you've got to stop. That sounds like the Hoodoo Gurus. And that song was When You Get to California. And that was on Max Shower, which is the album we did after we reformed. And that song was the thing that actually kind of got the band back together as the Hoodoo Gurus, because knowing that there was some other song as well that became Max Shower I was writing. I've been working with Brad, and they just weren't working with other musicians. And When You Get to California was so meant to be played by the Hoodoo Gurus, and I was kind of, you know, sort of denying it to myself for a couple more years, and then I finally realised, look, this is wrong, you know. Especially after Homebake and we played together, I realised that the band was actually alive and well. It was just being kept locked up in the bloody garage, and, you know, keys, you know, hidden away from me, so I couldn't drive, you know. And I realised it was just stupid to be denying myself access to this incredible, you know, engine, this band that was meant to play these songs. So that's when I got that band back together again.
Mm. Brad had an alter ego.
Sorry about that. That's the Persian Rugs story. Sorry, we were not here for that, but that's it.
We're also not here to hear about this band, the Monarchs. So tell me about how that fed into the timeline.
Brad did that. Brad did the Monarchs. You know, that was scratched, you know, for him, you know, be the lead guy and you know, maybe get out from under Dave Faulkner's iron fist. And he, you know, I like that Monarchs album, and I saw them play quite a lot. You know, it was a lot of fun. But Brad found out for himself actually that it's a lot harder than it looks. Being the lead singer and the guitarist and songwriter and chief cook and bottle washer, in terms of, you know, organising the gigs and trying to wrangle, in his case, some guys that were, you know, had other things on, and it became quite difficult. And he didn't really enjoy it that much. So that was a sort of a bit of an eye opener, I think. Not that I do all that stuff for the Gurus, but I do a lot of stuff for the Gurus that he suddenly found himself having to do, which was, yeah, it wasn't quite as much freedom as he thought.
We have the shows coming up with Dandy Warhols around Australia. Yeah. I guess, you know, it gives you a limited set list to do. The new album is out there. But Future's been in the set list, Dodge has been in the set list, Answered Prayers have been in the set list. I think the reality is that a lot of the songs off Chariot of the Gods won't ever make it onto stage, be performed live by the Hoodoo Gurus.
Well, a couple may or may not. We don't know. You know, I mean, we want to play pretty much as many as we can. I mean, we're not going to play them all every night, but we're going to, you know, pepper the set with the ones and not use the same ones every time. But that, you know, that is unfortunately one of those things, you know, because we do have certain songs that we have to play that are so strongly identified with the band in people's minds, you know, that they would feel cheated if we didn't do them. The songs like 1,000 Miles Away and things like that. And there are also other songs that, you know, the diehard fans, they love our new stuff and they're supporting us as well, but they also wouldn't mind if we, pulled out a couple of obscurities from our back catalogue as well to kind of, reward them for years of faithful service, and being into the band for more than just what was on the radio. So we want to do some of those songs as well, and so it's kind of like a lot of, it's arbitration or something when you write a set list. But the thing about playing the new songs, which we have noticed, is that they are going over well just in themselves, even before people had a chance to hear them on a record. There's been no flagging of energy in the show when we chuck them in, and we played these songs in front of quite mainstream audiences because it was Jimmy Barnes was headlining and we were on the bill with a bunch of other bands. And, there's probably a lot of people, excited to see both us and Barnesy together, they like both artists. But there would have been a lot of fans there, who were just like, into some of the other bands on the bill, and they didn't mind that we were on, but didn't really know much about us other than what they'd heard as hits. And so those people were the ones that I think you worry about losing interest when it's not a song that's super famous. And we weren't finding any problem with that with the new songs as well. So the sets were working really well with those. So we're not nervous about playing new songs. We certainly aren't going to be, let's say, playing only new songs, but we're not afraid to play a bunch of them in there. And, I don't think people will find it too difficult.
So when you've got Jimmy Barnes coming up next and you end off with My Girl, Come Anytime, Miss Free Love, 1,000 Miles Away, What's My Scene, and Like Wow, Wipeout, you're really putting Jimmy on notice, aren't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're doing the same with the Oils. They'll cop a bit of that. That's and when you're playing a really short set, as I say, that sort of outdoor crowd, you do tend to have to be a little bit more, immediate, the songs, because there are people there that aren't the strongest fans of the group, and have a cursory idea of what you're doing. So it's nice to kind of give them a bit of a G up and sort of know that there's something worth checking out. If they feel like they enjoyed that, they might come and see a longer show. Yeah, we're not afraid of playing before anyone, actually, or after anyone. There's only a few bands that slightly give us pause, and one would be the Fleshtones, dynamic live group, one that, they're not well known by other people, but, I worship the band and have all their records, and they're good friends of ours as well. And also, the Sonics, when we played with them on Dig It Up years ago, they were bloody incredible. Very tough band. And UMI aren't bad either. They've got a pretty dynamic, stage action, and so we always have to be on our game for them. They take it right to you. And last but not least, Red Cross, another great band that we adore that always put on a fantastic show. So they're about the only bands that we're scared of. I mean, maybe the Dandy Warhols will become one of those bands as well. We'll see. I know that they've got a lot of weapons in their arsenal, some big hits, and crowds sing along anthems, and and we like to think we've got a few of those ourselves. So we'll match them with them.
Yeah, well, it'd be good to see. It's a great double act too, Hoodoo Gurus and
Dandy Warhols. We like their music. I think there's that they belong together in certain ways. It's not like we're playing with something that's so off the side of what we do. We're kind of in the same terrain.
Yes, this weekend you've got off. That was to be a Midnight Oil show. Yeah,
very sad to have to disappoint people, but luckily we're getting to play again. Do this show in Anzac Day weekend. Yeah, I believe Rob's getting better, so I haven't heard just lately. I'll be talking to Rick in a little while, and he's very close to Rob, so he'd probably have the best medical update. But I think it was really just a case of he had to quarantine and serve out his time. But it's a terrible thing, and people shouldn't be cavalier about catching it, because I certainly don't want to get it, and none of us have had it, and we're trying to keep it that way.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Dave, good to talk to you. Chariot of the Gods, the first Hoodoo Gurus album in 12 years. Thanks for joining us here at Noise11 with the story.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for your support, and I hope you guys come out and see us and hear us play those new songs. We've played most of them. Maybe all of them. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We played them all on this thing last night on the broadcast, so we can.